What if some of the things you thought would never happen to you happened? Maybe you reconnect with an old flame, meet your favorite celebrity, or catch COVID. Or perhaps you find a dead body. I'm your host, Hepburn, and you're listening to the Voiceless Speak Forever podcast, a true crime podcast dedicated to exposing the many misdeeds and abuses done to animals. And every week, I'll be covering a new animal abuse case. Today, I will be covering the drowning of Jenny. In April of 2019, a volunteer from the Last Resort Animal Rescue was walking on Bonter Road of West Milford, New Jersey. It was enjoyable at first, walking amongst this serenity of nature, its stillness only cracked with the sounds of wildlife. But this peace was interrupted by a strange sight in the distance. Amongst the vegetation was a crate at the edge of Greenwood Pond. Inside the crate were puppy pads with blood on them, as well as a glass ice bucket. If these items were found together, it would have been bizarre enough. But what made it completely shockingly heartbreaking was the fact that a puppy laid in that crate. There was no doubt that this puppy was hurt, but perhaps it was still alive. Coming closer, the volunteer bent down, reached into the crate, and touched the puppy. It was ice cold, the body already stiff from rigor mortis. The police arrived and transported the puppy to a forensic photographer and then a vet who ultimately performed the necropsy on it. It was determined that the pup was a 10-week-old female golden retriever who had drowned. Since the dog had no name tag, the Last Resort Rescue decided to name her Jenny. At the site, the police weren't able to find any evidence that would allow them to find the perpetrator, but the Last Resort Rescue refused to give up. They posted a Facebook post pleading for anyone who knew anything to come forward and get justice for Jenny, kicking off the Justice for Jenny campaign. The campaign raised $12,000 as a reward for information leading to the perpetrator's arrest and brought enough attention to Jenny's death that hundreds of tips rolled in, two of which led to the arrest of a woman in May of 2019. Tonya Fay was arrested and charged with the death of Jenny. She at first claimed that the dog was already dead, but as you remember, the necropsy showed that the puppy had actually drowned. In February of 2020, a Passaic County grand jury indicted Tonya of animal cruelty. Tonya applied for the Pretrial Intervention Program, a program that usually gives first time offenders an alternative to the traditional process of criminal prosecution. If granted, Tanya would have been given rehabilitative services like counseling to deter future criminal behavior. Additionally, further court actions would be postponed for up to 36 months. Essentially, the goal is to avoid jail time and a criminal conviction. She was luckily denied. She appealed, but in May of 2020, the judge affirmed the denial. If Tanya was convicted, she faced up to 5 years in prison. In May of 2021, Tanya was offered a plea deal where she would have to spend 1 year in jail, continue her mental health counseling, serve 100 hours of community service when released, and retain the ability to keep a dog already under her care. Animal welfare, however, would do unannounced welfare checks, and Tanya would have to give updates on the dog's health. Additionally, Tanya would never be allowed to care for any new future dogs ever again. Despite the generous deal, Tanya's lawyer did not accept it. Rather, he stated that the paperwork he submitted would show Tanya in a very favorable light. Well, it didn't seem as though the paperwork showed Tanya in a good enough light because in August of 2021, Tanya pled guilty to third degree animal cruelty. She confessed that Jenny was sick, throwing up and had diarrhea, and was just, quote, laying there. She didn't really admit that she knew the dog was dead. She said she never checked for a pulse or checked if Jenny was still breathing. Instead of taking Jenny to the vet, Tanya chose to dump Jenny into the pond instead. She said that she just simply didn't want to pay the medical bills. Getting rid of Jenny was far easier than taking care of her. In October 2021, Tonya was sentenced to a little under 6 months in jail, 5 years of probation, and lost the ability to ever own a dog again. She was also forced to continue counseling during her 100 days of community service after her release. What do you think? Do you think her sentencing was fair? Do you think Jenny got her justice? Comment on the IG post about this case. Thank you guys so much for listening and for being so patient for the release of season 3. I was trying not to take such a long hiatus next time, but we're back and the podcast will probably run for another 9 weeks. As per usual, make sure you share the VSF podcast, follow VSF's IG, the period VSF period official, rate and review the podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts, and email me anything you want me to talk about at VSF period official period podcast at gmail.com. Also, I changed up the merch section on the VSF website, www.thevoicespeakforever.com. I now sell handmade crochet dog and cat toys. It would be really cool if you checked it out. So please be my guest and let me know if you have any questions about it. Thank you guys so much for listening. And I'll talk to you guys next Wednesday. Toodles!